Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to another episode of Storytime. And I am so excited about this particular Storytime because our Storytime program launched after the launch of our amazing co-authored book called Pieces to Purpose. And the title of this one is literally Pieces to Purpose. And my guest that I have with me today, Janie Frieberg, is here. And she is really going to talk to us about the pieces that have led to where she's at in her purpose and where she's at in her journey, and how many times along the journey we get into that trap where we find ourselves wanting to force pieces together. And oh, girl, we can talk about that all day. But Janie, welcome to the stage. I'm so excited to have you here with me today. Please take a moment, introduce yourself, tell the world what it is that you do, and then we're going to get into the pieces part.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really am excited about this opportunity. So I'm a wife of 27 years, and I have a son who's an attorney in San Antonio. I'm married to my beautiful daughter-in-law, Elena and Keaton. And then my daughter, Alexandra, is currently living in Dallas, going to chiropractor school. I am an enthusiast of life. I just love it. I love the outdoors, hiking, kayaking, music. I love traveling. Traveling is a big part. I think if I could do traveling as a part-time gig, I would do that too.
Oh, yeah.
I
Where's
love
all of our travel friends, right?
the new experiences, the culture, the food, just everything about it I love. So, and then my company is Brand Inspire and Imprint. And those I think as I talk to you today, that'll become a little more apparent as to why I opened those and the story behind those.
Yeah. I always think it's so interesting when we come to a different season. We talked about seasons earlier, but a different season in life, how we've developed these desires in us. We've developed these things that we know that we love, the things that I like to say bring either money, time, or magic. And, at this time in my life, at least, I'm looking for the magic. I'm looking for the opportunity to make a difference in the world. And I feel like, that's where we can kind of come to, and we take all these experiences that we've built up, all these pieces of our journey, and they've taken us to this place. So, Janie, one of the big things that we talk about in story time is, what were some of those pieces? What are some of the things that you feel like have really shaped you to the person that you are? And how did that lead you to Brand Inspire? So tell us a little bit about that. What are some of those defining moment pieces?
Sure. A couple of the bigger ones were when I realized that connecting the dots in my life was really important. It was so refreshing to be able to actually go back and see the why, the person, why the situation. Because I know that oftentimes when we're in those situations, we don't know why. Sometimes they're ugly situations, they're heavy.
Yeah.
We don't know why they're there.
Right.
But then later we can see the why.
Yeah.
And that was really one of the major turning points. The other one was just like you discussed, my realization that some things I was trying to force to happen. And I realized that if I was trying to force it, it wasn't going to work, right?
Yeah.
If we force puzzle pieces, go and look at that puzzle. It's not going to look right.
Yeah.
And that's no different than our lives.
Yeah.
And the other was that although I had a plan for life, there was different plans for me.
Yeah.
And that's continued to happen. Doesn't matter how many times I make that plan, it's good to have it. But it's also just important to realize that sometimes there's going to be changes that are going to be thrown at you, curveballs. But those are all a part of the journey.
Yeah. Well, those are like three very good on ramps. So I'm going to start with the first one, connecting the dots. And then we'll go into the second and being flexible finally. But with connecting the dots, you're absolutely right. When we're walking through things, a lot of times, whether it's a happenstance, circumstance, victim stance, whatever, right? A lot of times it's really hard to see why it happens. And many times for myself, I would see myself like just totally straight up blaming others. Like, it was the business's fault. It was XYZ's fault. It was they did this to me or whatever. And what you just described with seeing how the pieces come together, I think that takes a large amount of really self-discovery and maturity, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us, at what point in your life do you feel like you came to the place where you could actually look back and see how dots connected? And when you saw that, did it humble you? Did it cause you to forgive? Did it, like, what are some of the emotions you dealt with when you saw some of that?
Yeah, just what you said. Absolutely humbling. And um, so it was sitting in a hospital room
Yeah.
was when the realization that there were so many components to my life that led up to where I guess I discovered what my purpose was. And when I started connecting the dots, I had forgiveness for people that, yeah, had hurt me along the way, or also the discovery of what role they played
Mm,
in that discovery.
yeah.
And for the people who were the awesome inspiration, it just made it that more compelling where they were with me in that. And it was amazing that I could connect those dots literally up until the moment that I opened my own business.
Wow. Can you walk us through any of that?
Yes. So the end around 2012, 2013, I was working for the Children's Grief Center in Albuquerque, now known as the Grief Center. And that was just my boss. I was looking for volunteer opportunities, and my boss at the time had told me about it. And I was like, that's interesting. So I started in and absolutely loved it. People would ask the question, how can you do this? How can you go in at night and listen to these stories? And I would say, because it's not me
Yeah.
going through it.
Yeah.
And I knew that there was something there. There was something that was in me that really loved what I was doing there.
Right.
Little did I know that that was setting me up for the next several years of curveballs and curveball after curveball that was about to be thrown.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a realization. So 2014, I lost my father, and he had heart disease, and that in itself was a big whammy. I mean, I'd lost people before,
Sure.
but
Not your
not dad.
Yeah.
Not dad. And so that was a humbling experience. I mean, it was really amazing to watch him go through that. I would take the way that we lost him over the next couple that we had, because we were there to help him end his journey.
Mhm.
He was so graceful. Then we decided to move right along that way. So from Albuquerque to Austin, we sold our house, and in the middle of that, we left our son in Albuquerque because he was going to go to the University of New Mexico. Boy, oh boy, nobody prepared me for
Oh my
that.
gosh, being a distant mom like that, like that what you
Leaving, yep, the day we dropped him
Yes.
off and I watched him walk away. Oh boy, the next 2 hours driving were just straight tears. Like, again, nobody
Sure.
prepared me for that moment. I got home and just felt so lost, right?
Yeah.
So that was another, wake up moment. And then that following August, my brother was hospitalized for bypass surgery. So heart disease runs in the family.
Sure.
So then towards the beginning of the next year, then we found out my mom had terminal cancer. So here we go back into another journey of walking one of our parents through, the end of life, as it were.
Mhm.
And so then tragically, my little brother went in with a heart attack, 39 years old, and he had stents placed, came out of the surgery, but never made it home to us. He ended up coding and left behind his wife and 3 little kids. And that 3 days prior to that, we had just lost my grandmother, my mom's mom. So in one weekend, she lost her mom and my little brother.
Wow.
No parent should have to go through that. And that was so hard to watch that. And
Sure.
that right there became a grief journey that I could have never have comprehended.
Absolutely.
The emotions and everything from sadness to anger, that whole thing of losing my little brother, that was just, I can't, that is something that if I were to try to explain to somebody and prepare them for, you can't.
No.
You can't prepare anybody for death, but that's the tragic aspect of that was really hard.
Yeah.
And then our little fur baby of 16 years that helped our little kids grow, in life, we had to put her down. And that was something, again, I wasn't prepared for. How do you just don't prepare for all that. And then 2020, my mom lost her battle to cancer. So her her journey in cancer was also a time of growth for me, because watching her go through that, she was so graceful, and she was preparing me for a lot of things that I didn't realize she was. And so one of them was that I had talked to her about opening my business. And she kept telling me, "You've done it. You've done all the hard work. You're ready for this.
Right.
Do it." And I still kept getting stuck with my lack of confidence in some areas. So 3 days prior to her passing away, approximately 3 days, I had received a card in the mail from her, and there were two necklaces in there. One was the world and one was mountains. And her message to me was, she thought she could, and she did. I need you to go out and change the world. Go help people.
Wow.
So I think, well, and she had asked me to do her estate. So I went into go mode, getting the funeral prepared and getting that all done. And so it took a little while, but I remember sitting with myself one day, finally having the emotions come to pass for her. And I felt my necklaces up on my chest, and she spoke like I needed to do this. And what an inspiration. She was really my biggest cheerleader. So she was good. She's going to be she's a cheerleader on the other side for me. And so, yeah, by April, I had opened my business, and one of the best decisions I've ever made. Probably my only regret is not doing it sooner, but timing was absolutely perfect, just like all things. Right?
Yeah. And we can't, you talked about connecting the dots when we're walking through things. I'm sure none of that made sense. None of that made sense. It seemed completely unfair. And I can't even imagine. Like we went through a season where we lost a couple of people during a similar time period. And even when you have that empathy muscle because of experience, right? I was talking to somebody the other day, and the gift of empathy comes at a huge cost, right? I mean, the ability to be able to see people in their suffering and to be able to love them through it means that you had to walk through, that you've walked through something and you understand that pain. And so, empathy is a muscle, but it's not one that we can just build without doing work or walking through some painful moments, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that connection, in 2012, I actually lost two really good friends. And I remember even losing, one was to cancer and one was to a motorcycle accident. And I even remember then, like, I wanted to reach out to people and see how they were doing. Like, it hurt.
Sure.
But there were people, I'm like, I need to check on people. So that was another moment for me that I realized that there was something about walking people through loss that was very impactful for me.
And prepared you.
Yes.
Yeah. You think about, it's so interesting. One of the things that I write about in my chapter of Pieces to Purpose is where I had to go back and forgive myself and to let go of some shame from some moments of something that I went through personally. And I had no idea that journey of healing that equipped me to really help support somebody who I love very dearly that walked through something at the same age that I was when I walked through it. It's crazy to look back now and to see those dots connect. And what a gift, right? To have a gift of vision. One of my favorite scriptures is those who have eyes, let them see, right? Sometimes, and I used to think, well, what does that even mean? Well, it means a lot. Like there's a lot of things that sometimes we miss because we're going through the motions or because our vision is cloudy or because of situations. But your second thing that you talked about was not forcing things to happen. And I can only imagine that when you were going through some of those grieving times that you felt like nothing was in your control, right? I can't do anything. I can't fix this. There's nothing I can do, right?
Yes.
And so I don't know about you, but when that happens to me, I have a tendency to try to fix everything and control everything that I can control. And in that, it's very easy to try to force things to happen. So tell me
Yes.
about that learning journey of you saying, I can't force things.
So even in starting my business, there are, you meet so many people along the way, right?
Mhm.
I will say this time and time again, like we've discussed the fact that it takes a village to raise children, but I truly believe that it doesn't stop there.
Right.
Like we need a village, right?
Right.
And so
Yes. We need a
there's
tribe. We need a village. We need a coach, a doctor, a therapist, and all the things. Yeah.
absolutely, because and so it's all about the people in our life, right?
Yeah.
We have some that are going to be supportive along the way.
Yeah.
There's some that are going to be in our life a long time, some a short time. Sometimes they're there for us, sometimes we're there for them.
Yeah.
But that was probably my biggest thing is I was trying to force relationships to stay together
Hmm.
or forcing business relationships maybe because I wanted my business to grow.
Right.
Um, trying to make things happen that just weren't happening, but I kept trying, right?
Yeah.
And the more I tried,
The uglier it
the
got.
uglier it got,
Yeah.
right? And that I think that that's happened several times in my life. I even think you mentioned something about, work and companies, and sometimes we get irritated with them. And that's one thing that I even coach people on now is that oftentimes the companies are okay. It's us. It's
Mm-hmm.
us that's grown,
Mm-hmm.
or we're not being challenged, or it's just not filling our needs anymore. But we wait and we try to find
Yeah. We
the
hold
reason.
on.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we start making things worse for ourselves. And so even in those situations, I would force myself to stay in companies or
Right.
just to keep making it work, or because I was afraid to what would be the ramifications if I left this job, right?
Right. Right.
What benefits do I lose? What's the money?
So, what do you
There's
think was the motive behind that?
to
To control or to be stuck?
fear,
Yeah.
fear,
Mm-hmm.
fear of the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
and fear that I would fail, and fear of what people would think.
Yeah.
If I left it, what if I did make my own business? Would people support me? Would they think it was a dumb idea?
Right.
So I would force myself to stay.
Yeah.
But the other side of that is that in starting my business, I also would get blurry eyed.
Sure. Sure.
There's business opportunities. We make friends all the time, or we encounter acquaintances through networking. And sometimes it's hard to tell, is this person here because we need business together, or is there a friendship,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to
And
be
sometimes
exchanging
it can
money
be
or
both.
hugs?
Yeah.
And it can be both.
It
Yes.
can be both, but I think discernment is required, and that is hard because the work that you do is life-changing work. You have such a opportunity to bless people at such a amazing place, right? You're helping them with mindset, you're helping them with overcoming obstacles, with overcoming a lot of the things that you dealt with. And at the same time, you're making them rock stars in business, right? And
Right.
so I'm sure that most of your clients become friends because in order to elevate somebody to that level, you have to get kind of personal, right?
Right.
So, how did you come to the place where you're like, okay, I need to have maybe some healthy boundaries and make like how did that come to light? How did you have to make those distinctions between all right, this is a work relationship. I don't need to how did you come to those places?
So, a couple of them from a personal perspective were life instances that were happening where I just felt like there were some people that were maybe not supporting me completely,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Had to cleanse my circle.
Yeah.
And in the the place of business, actually, probably one of the bigger moments for me was again back in I had to have an emergency surgery,
Right.
and I had a lot of thinking time in 5 days. And there
Sure.
was a lot of reflection that happened as what have you done in your business so far? Who have you helped? And those that you have helped, where was the why in there? And where was the success, and where do you think that that was? And it was the genuineness, the authentic relationships that grew from there. It
Sure.
wasn't the ones who were just quick little money makers
Right.
or in and out. They were truly the relationships that I was building, and I really started looking at that, and also the people that were either supporting me or not.
Right.
And I really started deciding that I was done walking on eggshells around some people.
Mhm.
The other piece of it was that I had not fulfilled my purpose yet. Even though I had my business open,
Mm.
and I love what I do, that doesn't change. There was just something that still wasn't complete.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I realized that I needed to get back into helping people with grief.
Yeah.
And I told myself, I'm going to give my body a year to heal, recover, and do what it needs to. And then I'm going to somehow get myself back into it. And funny story, I could show you on my phone. And I didn't even realize this until I was telling a story later.
Mm.
But 1 year to the date, I had sent a message out to somebody and said, ready. And
And you didn't even realize the
no,
date. Oh my gosh.
no,
Isn't that
it
so
wasn't
fun?
until I was telling the story later that I was like, I wonder what day that was, because it was so close to the time frame
Sure.
that I had gone through the surgery.
Yeah.
And so I went and pulled my phone, and sure enough, there it is, ready on January 3rd.
Wow. Wow.
And that moment,
Yeah.
that decision was one of the most elating experiences, and it has been. It has truly been, like, I believe that everything prior to this has prepared me for this.
Mhm. Mhm.
I
Absolutely.
love my business. I love everything about it, and this just took it to another level.
So talk about this, because I know you just got a certification.
I'm almost done.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So tell us what you're doing.
So I'm getting a trauma-informed grief coaching certification,
Love it.
and I'm working in a program, Grief to Purpose, and it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, the title couldn't be any better. And the people that I'm getting to meet in this program are some of the most amazing humans,
Wow.
and they humble me.
Yeah.
When I tell my story and then I hear theirs, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's moms who have dealt with the loss of children. There's estrangement. There's so many people, and they're all in there to try to help people.
Wow. You know, I have a very specific quote that I feel like was definitely led by the Holy Spirit. Like Teresa didn't come up with this,
Mm.
but it was that, we're all on this journey to discover purpose. Every single one of us. There's two predominant questions that we have in life. Who am I? And why am I here? Right. And the who am I a lot of times we get these identities from those around us. We get, this branding. We talked about that a little while ago about how all these things get attached to us because of who we're surrounded with, what our circle looked like when we were younger. And at one point in our lives, we have the opportunity to just have our eyes opened, like you did, like I did, where we really just self-reflect and say, okay, but who am I? Like at the core, like you take this hat away and you take that off and you do, who am I? And those experiences become part of that journey, right? And so when you answer that, then the next question that we all face is, now why am I here? Right? What was the purpose of all of those things? And so when I sum that up with our conferences, as we talk about this, is that sometimes our purpose is attached to pleasure. Like, wouldn't it be fun if my purpose was traveling the world? And that was my favorite thing to do, right?
Absolutely.
It's not my favorite thing to do. So I'm glad it's not that. But anyway.
Your favorite thing is not to travel?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that it's just, that's not my favorite. My favorite thing is being on stages and inspiring people, seeing light bulbs go off in their eyes and a glow coming out of their
yes.
chest. That's my magic. That's my favorite thing. But it would be nice if my purpose was specifically attached to that. A lot of times, though, our purpose is attached to pain and grief to purpose. That name that you said is just phenomenal. And that's most people's journey, right? Some of times it's pleasure. Most of the time it's a grief, a loss, a pain. But it's always people. It's always attached to people because that's the way we were designed. We were designed by our creator to be a body, to be a community, to be part of something, to pour back into others and take this brilliance of wisdom and knowledge and experience. And oh, by the way, empathy.
Mm-hmm.
That was the biggest price, right? To pour it into the hearts and minds and souls of others to provide hope, peace, and a path to purpose for them to follow as well. And I think when you've identified what those pain points are and you identify your people Now you're on the journey,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Even I mean, even if you look at our past back into childhood, right? We're
right,
born into a family, we live in communities, we're a part of religions, all
right,
of that forms who we are.
right,
Whether or not we choose to carry all of that,
right.
we have that option to
Sure.
to bring that over. I mean, I came from a family where my dad was a mechanic. There were 6 of us. My mom had to do whatever it took to help make ends meet.
Right.
She had a cleaning business. We would go help her clean. So I was taught hard work, and all of those experiences lead up to where we are, right? And for instance, two of the goals that I had for my own children was I wanted to make sure that they were able to go to universities and that they could travel, because those were my my growth in my career was a really long hard path.
Sure.
And so I wanted to try to help alleviate that for them so that they could go and get their formal education
Right.
and kick that off the best that I could. So I worked for that, and then to be able to travel with them and have them do those experiences
Yeah.
and experience change. They've also moved, and so they've been able to. I've moved a lot.
Mm.
Sometimes you live in communities where you grow up in them and
Yeah.
your whole world is surrounded by them, but I'm blessed to have little communities all over.
Absolutely. And how beautiful that is, especially now that you're at a place where you've really discovered who you are. And when you show up and you're visible in those communities, like the real part of you is now visible and you can make a true impact in all of those different places. And how cool is that in today's time that we have the ability to be ultra connected, right? There is a downside to that. There's a false sense of community, which is a big problem in today's society and today's time. People feel like they're connected all over the world, and maybe they don't actually speak to anybody or they don't actually have real relation, right? But the upside to that is that when you do it right and when you show up authentically, you can shine your beautiful lights in the world in all these communities all over the place. There's no limits to where you can go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah. So tell us. So we talked about, the pieces, and we talked about being able to look back and connect the dots. But we were going to talk about being flexible.
Hmm.
So let's talk about that. And I want to share something as you kind of get your thoughts together on that side of it. But I remember there was a time in my life where, and same with you, where can look back now and I'm like, that was a piece, that was a piece, that was a piece. Like, you're like, whoa, that was fun, right? But there was a time in my life, Janie, where I was at this Mary Kay conference, and it was the very first event that I had ever been to, like through a business kind of conference. Actually, the first one I went to was a Zig Ziglar event, and for those that follow Zig Ziglar, he was phenomenal, and he was at that event. But anyway, I went to this Mary Kay conference, and I felt the feels. I was like totally in it. I could feel the emotion. I could feel all the things that they were really good at bringing together to really inspire and motivate and encourage people. And all of a sudden, while I'm at this event, I literally the national sales director was speaking, and all of a sudden I could see myself in her place on the stage looking out at the audience, and I could see a light glow coming out of their chests. Like whatever I was on stage speaking was creating something in them. So I saw a vision of future in that moment. And that was beautiful. And it gave me hope for what my future looked like. But what I found as I continued down that journey is that was a vision of what was yet to come. But I was so tied to making it happen through a specific organization that I said no to anything. And I almost missed what God has for me today. I was so tied to that because that's where the vision was cast, that I was determined that that's where my final place was, right? And when I finally let go and said, "Okay, I know where you're taking me because I had vision, but how you get me there, that's for you to figure out, God." When I made that decision to be flexible with the outcome, everything changed. So tell me what that looks like for you.
Well, a quick story on the flexibility would be to back up to when I envisioned what my whole future was going to be back, in my bedroom as a high schooler, right? I
Okay.
I was I was set to I wanted to somehow go into the FBI. That
What?
was really what I wanted to do. Yeah. Um and so the courses that I did start originally were political science and stuff to take me there. And so yeah, that was going to be, but I ended up having my son, and that changed that course. And I'll say that when you look back on life and you see the changes, how gratifying is it to see what's happened? I mean, at
Sure.
the time, again, maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe it's hard. Maybe the situation just doesn't, you're not sure
Yeah.
why, or why am I in the middle of this? But man, honestly, I wouldn't change anything at this point, because everything has been for a reason to get me here, right?
Yeah.
So, and my son coming into my life was an amazing, thing. He's such an awesome human being, and so that was the first change, right?
Sure.
Like I'm like, well, you can't go into the FBI and be a mom. That's not going to work.
Yep.
So that changed the course for me, and that's happened more times than I can count, where
Mm.
I see that, okay, this is what I want. I'm pretty sure this is where I'm heading. And then something happens along the way.
Yeah.
So I would say that the flexibility came when I was at the grief center, and I knew that that's really what I wanted. I knew that I really did want to work for
Mm.
that. And even after my dad had passed and we moved to Texas, I sought that out. I sought really hard to find an organization or a way for me to open up something here. And every stone I turned over was just there. It just wasn't there. It was
Mm.
not in the works for me at that time.
Sure.
And I put that on the back burner. And I
Yeah.
had to forge ahead with what I knew, get to know people here in Texas because I was new to the area, sharpen up some of my skills,
Yeah.
get to know people, build that network.
Right.
And so that flexibility was really important. Right. And how
But
many
let's,
years after that?
yeah, I was going to say, but let's look at what happened since then, right? Since then, you've created a business, which now, are you able to talk about the partnership that you're working on right now? Are you able to talk about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Because that is like mind blowing, right? And the capacity that you're going to be able to have and the outreach you're going to be able to do through this platform that's just exploding is huge. But what if, and Janie, I want you to help because you are a coach and you help people with grieving. And sometimes we grieve dreams, and sometimes we grieve desires and positions and different things. We had this guest at our church last week, and he shared the story about a woman who got married young, and she had a dream to do something different, and she ended up getting married. And this now 20 years later, when he's at her church talking to her, she's literally blamed everything in her life on the fact that she married this man, and that she had to give up everything. And I want to talk about the power of flexibility and how those things can line up to propel you to a whole big purpose. But if we're stuck in that grieving piece and or in that piece of, well, I didn't get it my way, so I'm just going to be mad for the rest of my life or whatever, right? I mean, that's a big thing for people. And there may be somebody watching this today that secretly is dealing with, or maybe in their subconscious mind, they don't even realize it, but they're dealing with something that they're ruminating on and they're just not letting go of. And it's stopping them from being able to see the pieces that lead to purpose. So, in your experience as a coach, I want you to really, I want you to think about how would you coach somebody through a grieving process, whether it's a grief of a dream, desire, a business, a plan, or a family member. You've had experience in all of those things, right?
Yes.
So, what would you say to somebody who might be stuck on something to help them through that journey a little bit?
Soften your view,
Yeah.
for starters, because if you have a closed mind, you're not going to see the opportunities that are there.
Mhm.
And I think that the connecting point is really important,
Mhm.
because if you understand that the connection's going to be there, then you're going to have an open mind, and you're really going to be paying attention to who's coming into your life.
Mm. Yes.
And that's a very powerful moment when you realize that there people don't just happen there,
Right.
right? And so if you are stuck on that and this is you can't get past it, it's time to sit down with yourself
Mm.
and see, are you trying to force things?
Mhm.
Because if you are, then it's probably not right.
Yeah.
Because when you are doing the things that are meant to be, it's amazing how they start falling into place.
Okay, now tell us how yours did, because this is such a cool story.
So after I made the decision to start the grief certification program, well, maybe I should also say that with my company, because there is a lot there, right?
Absolutely.
So with Brand Inspire, that all started with the vision to help people have amazing brands.
Right.
But in addition to that, I had gotten my coaching certification, and all of a sudden I realized that people were leaning on me to not just create that, but how can I get my team to
Mhm.
buy into the brand?
Mhm.
And that led to me being able to go into the companies and make them look just as beautiful on the inside as they did on the outside. So helping them with their processes, their procedures, coaching C-levels and managers, and we're mentoring the employees and just making sure all the processes and procedures were moving in a good direction.
Right.
And that's where my business, you know, evolved into. So
Sure. Yeah.
so that's where, and so now the component that I'm adding is the grief certification. And I'm in this program and I'm being able to speak with the owner, and she's talking about how um, it's growing at a very fast rate.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how it is, but some of the processes and stuff just aren't working because it's growing at such a fast rate.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so she spoke with me about helping her with that. So my company is currently helping to get to get this program, and it's so amazing. And not only that, I'm also getting to build brands for these coaches, these future coaches.
Wow.
And let me tell you, some of the stories that I have to tell and building these brands have been so inspiring.
Wow.
So inspiring. I truly believe that these people are in the right place. And I
Mm.
believe I am in the right place.
That's so awesome. Yeah. And what if, you think back, what if you had been so set on staying with that grief center that you were at many years ago? And maybe what if you beat yourself up because you didn't stay there, or you didn't come to Austin and pour your heart into that? I feel like there's three things that we want and that we need for fulfillment a lot of times in life. And that's, money to do the things that we want to do, to travel, to do those types of things, to pay for our bills and put food in our belly, right? Time, because that's a commodity that we cannot get back, and it's important
Right.
what we do with it. And magic. Magic is our purpose. Magic is the thing that makes light bulbs go off in people, and, seeing dots connected and all
Right.
of those types of things. And at different stages in our life, we've really got to analyze and say, which of these is most important right now? And it's okay if it's not, and that was one of the things that I really struggled in one of my businesses that I've had in the past with, was that money wasn't really my motivator. I wanted the magic. I wanted to see the light bulb go off in people. I wanted to see those aha breakthrough moments and let them discover, and just be their little cheerleader on the sideline as they're discovering
Absolutely.
what purpose is, and really owning it for themselves. But my mentors were dangling money over me, but money wasn't my driver at that time, you know? And so so I would just say to our guests that are watching today, if you're at this impasse or this place where you're not feeling content in whatever it is that you're doing, I know you talked about that earlier, about sometimes, we kind of outgrow companies, right?
Right.
I remember a season in life where I outgrew where I was at, but I just kept staying.
Hmm.
Also because of fear, also because of feeling unworthy. Like, I don't even know how I got this job. How am I going to get the next one? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and it's crazy, but lack of confidence and fear kept me attached to something that season was over. And I was so discontent at it. And if I looked back, there was no magic. I wasn't fulfilled. The money was okay, but it wasn't my motivator, and time wasn't even an option, And so I had to look at it and say, okay, that was missing. And so for our friends that are watching today and they're like, well, I want to walk in purpose. I want to do these things. I want to find my pieces. What would you say to them to encourage them around how to discover that within themselves and just really summing all these really key things up? Because, man, today's topic was powerful. I loved our discussion about the pieces that we have, about, looking back and seeing how they fit, but not forcing, and then being flexible. But what would you say to somebody who's watching and they're like, where do I start?
Self-reflection is the first place.
Yeah.
When my husband and I sold our home in Georgetown a couple years ago, the townhouse we live in has a lot of windows, and so we're up high in our bedroom, and I chose to just have sheer curtains in there.
Yeah.
And I watched the seasons change through those curtains. I watched the sunrise. I watched the planes go by, and there's a lot of reflection that happens there. And through those moments, I've rediscovered a love for myself.
Mm.
We have to love ourselves in order to be good for anybody.
Right.
And to be able to see the power that we have within ourselves to be able to go out and make a difference,
right,
whatever that is.
Right.
Right. And so we have to look in the mirror, decide what it is that's keeping us from being able to accomplish those big dreams that we have, because it starts with us.
Absolutely. And, I remember there was this time that I realized I looked in the mirror and I saw my eyes and I actually saw myself. And I realized in that moment that there were plenty of times that I looked in the mirror, but I didn't see me.
Absolutely.
Self-reflection is huge. And in our unbreakable life journey, that is where we start. We call it self-discovery, but it's the same thing. It's really getting behind the surface and saying, okay, who am I? And in that journey of self-reflection, it's also being kind to self, right? What does self-love mean? The Bible says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And I've taken that, for many years as love your neighbor as yourself. Okay. No, I had to reverse that a little bit and say, the reality is we can't love our neighbor any more than we love ourselves. And so if we don't love ourselves, if we don't have compassion, grace, mercy, forgiveness, healing, all of empathy, all those things for ourselves, how in the world can we have it for anybody else?
Absolutely. We have to hold ourselves accountable as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're going to go on that journey, we're going to, see ourselves and reflect and decide what it is. We have to be honest with ourselves and what we have to do to prepare for that. The other thing is we do have to seek, I say, forgiveness of people, but there was one of the very first tasks that I had in this course was really eye-opening to me, because it said that in order for you to heal, you have to accept a situation. You don't have to endorse it.
Right.
And you don't have to endorse the person that did it if there was a person involved, but you have to be able to accept the situation in order to start the healing process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I believe that until you can get past those moments, you can't grow.
Yeah.
It will keep you from growing.
Yeah. And that's so sad because there are a lot of hard moments that we all face.
Yes.
I remember a time where we faced something, and because of a lot of the work that we had done, that I had personally done, I was able to forgive somebody of something that was excruciatingly painful. And people didn't understand that. And the reason is probably because they still have things that they need to heal from on their own, right? But when you can come to a place of forgiving, you can step into the other side of that situation. And many times there is a lesson. Now, I am not a believer that things happen to us just so we have a lesson. Like, I don't like that philosophy. But I think that in everything, there is a lesson. In everything, there is something that you can do different, better, and or grow from or protect or whatever. But to be able to look at it from a healed lens propels you in a whole new way, right? And so
Absolutely.
for anybody that, is dealing with something that's really, really hard, and the concept of forgiveness just seems like we're throwing a bucket of cold water in your face, I hope it doesn't feel that way today. I hope that, what you're receiving is hope that you can get on the other side of a really hard situation. And the encouragement that you don't do it alone. Like on my healing journey, you talked about a tribe earlier, you talked about community. When I needed healing with things, it took a community. It took, when I needed spiritual healing, it was my church community. When I needed emotional healing, it was my coach and my therapist community. When I need personal healing, it was me and the Holy Spirit. Like I had to have community because I didn't have the strength to do it on my own. I didn't have the vision or the ability to see things fully on my own. Sometimes it takes somebody else peeking behind the curtain, but you got to give them permission, and you have to give them access.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Growth happens in so many different levels, right? And there's so many different layers to us as individuals, right? If you peel back the layers, there's so much going on.
Yeah.
But if you can get on the other side of it, there's incredible things to happen.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And the healing is a huge part of it. You can't be good if you're still broken.
Right. Yeah.
And that's another piece to the puzzle, right? Is in order to, I think that once you go through the healing process, you don't try to force those puzzle pieces anymore.
You just realize, I think for me, I've come to the place where it's going to be okay. Like, I know it's going to be okay. Things are hard. It's going to be okay.
Right.
Things are painful. It's going to be okay. That muscle's going to heal. That surgery it's going to be fine. The things that are supposed to work will work, and the things that aren't will fall off. And you'll know eventually, right? So I know this kind of is ending on a heavy note, but I think that is part of it, right? Sometimes things can't always be, beautiful and exciting and fun, because that's not how life is, right? Life has ups, it has downs, it has roller coaster moments, it has beauty, it has pain. But you don't have to do it alone. And that's one of the things that I love about story time, is that each and every one of us have a story to tell. Each and every one of us have scars. And I think when we hear those stories and we realize that everybody does have layers, right? It's a lot easier to have empathy and love and grace when you encounter people, whether it's, your family or the stranger on the side of the road, right? Now you're like, I find myself many times thinking, I wonder what they've been through, not from a judgmental place, which maybe was where I was before, but from a place of just curiosity, like, man, something must have happened. And the reality is, when we look at statistics, to everybody, something has happened.
Absolutely. And I think curiosity is a great word.
Yeah.
Intentionality, curiosity, those are all words that really help to enlighten, right? And create that desire to have an openness for the journey and everything that you're going to encounter, right? A journey, your life is a journey. Journeys are not marathons.
Right.
Right? They're meant to learn along the way. And the other thing, though, wow, if I could go back and tell myself way back when, is to live in the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Because I believe that so much of life is lost, even as a mom. Golly, like, I was living my life with my kids every single day, but there's so much that I missed at the same time because we're in the hustle.
Right.
Running them around everywhere. And we're forgetting to take that moment to, like, really enjoy those moments, so that they aren't just the memories, right?
Right.
So being in the present.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Well, I have definitely felt like I have been present in this beautiful conversation today. So thank you for sharing all of that journey with me and your key learners, right? So to recap them for everybody, would you go over your 3 points again about not connecting the dots?
Connecting the dots, yes.
Okay.
Yep, and being flexible.
Yep.
Being open for the changes that are inevitable, right?
Yeah.
And
I know, that's why I asked you to recap it. So connecting the dots, being flexible, and not forcing the pieces
yes,
together.
Not forcing the pieces. Yes, yeah.
See, we're so flexible. We don't even have an agenda. I love it. Well, Janie, thank you for your time today. Please tell everybody again one more time, because I'm sure there might be somebody out here that is thinking, wow, I never thought that maybe I needed a grief counselor or a grief therapist, or man, that sounds really cool what you're able to do for business. Like, I want my business to be as pretty on the inside as it is on the outside. So tell us again how to reach you.
So Brandinspire is my company, BRANDENSPYR, and then Imprint. but probably the easiest way is just janiefrieberg@gmail.com.
Perfect.
Yeah. Then that way,
Perfect.
it's a simple reach out.
Well, we'll make sure that we've got all the spelling and all the good things on the tags at the bottom. But thank you for being my special guest today. Thank you for your time, your energy, your story, and your desire to get it out in the world because the world needs to hear it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You're so welcome. Well, friends, thank you for your time and your energy today on this beautiful episode of Storytime. And again, we've talked about pieces to purpose, and wow, I love even her tag of grief to purpose, right? And friends, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what situation you've walked out of, you're walking into, but I do know this is that you're not alone. You have a story, and in this beautiful world that you happen to be part of, you have a very important purpose. So let's discover it together. But until then, we will see you next time on Storytime. Bye bye.